one area where the skills and the skill requirements haven't changed over the last few years, and they're not going to, is the need for marketers to have strong communication skills, customer relationship and internal relationship skills, and stakeholder management skills. So, as a marketer, you can be the best marketer in the world, but if you are really poor at building relationships and communicating your ideas, what's the point of having all of that, knowledge?
This is That Marketing Podcast.
Made by marketers, for marketers.
Welcome to Season 2 of That Marketing Podcast. We've really enjoyed exploring all the nooks and crannies of marketing techniques over the last 2 years. So now we're having a refresh and speaking to leaders from specific industries about their approach to marketing. And where better to start for a marketing podcast than with the Chartered Institute of Marketing. Gemma Butler, CIM's marketing director, joined us on the podcast to share some thoughts about how their members have adapted to the world of 2021, how demand for skills has shifted, and her view on how B2B and B2C marketers should see each other. I hope you enjoy listening and happy marketing. So on this episode of the podcast, we are very, very lucky to have Gemma Butler, the marketing director of the CIM, to have some really high-level talk and some interesting things about what's been going on in marketing from her perspective. So, Gemma, thank you very much for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I think we've got to start with the most obvious question, which is how has marketing from a CIM perspective been affected by all the changes we've seen over the last year, 18 months? I can't think of anyone that's been not affected by it, but I'd be interested to get your perspective from kind of a higher view of marketers a bit more broadly.
I think it's fair to say that marketing has, as a function, has been elevated over 2020 since we went into lockdown. Whether it's other parts of the business turning to marketing to understand how do we communicate, how do we use digital, how do we change or alter our products? How do we keep engagement up, brand, reputation, all of these things? Everybody suddenly turned to marketing. It was really interesting because CIM did some work with the CMO survey, which is a survey that's been running in the US for the last 13, 14 years. And we helped them and the London Business, in association with the London Business School, do their inaugural CMO survey in the UK for the first time. And actually, one of the key headline results that came out of that was that 73% of senior marketers in the UK all said and stated that marketing as a function had been hugely elevated during the pandemic. So, everybody suddenly turned to the function that knows how to engage and how to communicate and how to talk. And also, interestingly, that's looking back 18 months. I think over 18 months and looking forward, we've seen some really huge issues, I think it's fair to say, and challenges come to the fore, really. So, we just released our report, the CMO 50, where we did both qualitative and quantitative research with some of the leading CMOs from leading brands in the UK. And, there's, as well as a pandemic, as well as a health crisis, we've got some big issues that marketing is kind of central to in terms of understanding it, how we take it forward, how we protect brand reputation, how we communicate. And there's diversity and inclusion, there's sustainability, there's data, there's regulation, there's social media. And I think both agree social media is a hive of views and voices and opinions, and it needs to be managed very carefully.
Yeah. Do you think that means, I think it's probably fair to say when we initially went into lockdown, there was very much a kind of tactical focus. People went, oh my God, what do we do? Like, what do we get out the door? But it sounds like then that's actually given way to a better conversation about brand strategy, which probably marketers don't get to think about maybe as much as they should at the expense of tactics. Do you think that's right?
I think we have seen a shift in marketing taking its rightful place as a more strategic function. I think it's been far too long where marketing's been seen as advertising and sales and basically selling people stuff that they may not necessarily want. So this has been a real opportunity where marketers have had the opportunity to go back to the core of brand strategy and communication. And I think businesses that as we were all thrown into a situation that none of us have ever been in before, we're thinking, how on earth do we remain engaged with our audience when nobody can go out?
Okay, how do you think that's translated into the kind of skills that marketers A need and B are actively pursuing? Is there more of a doubling down? People saying, I need to learn more about this core thing that I'm already doing, or do you think they're pushing much more into this complete change in circumstances has opened up a massive field or a massive something else that we're not doing already, and I want to learn that?
I think so. From a prioritization of skills, I mean, we know that marketing moves at a rapid pace, and it's driven by technology, it's driven by digital. Keeping up to date with digital skill sets is almost a daily job for specialists that do these things as the tools get more complex and they evolve. I think what the pandemic did is, combined with a certain level of, will I have a job at the end of this, or actually some self-reflection on the fact I haven't kept my skill sets up, we've seen a huge amount of marketers coming through CIM prioritizing themselves in terms of upskilling themselves, learning things that they necessarily wouldn't have had the time to do before. But it's an interesting one because I think that skills demands kind of change with recruitment demands, and digital will always remain at the fore and as one of the leading areas where they need skill sets. But we've seen a lot more focus around people coming in doing brand and strategy and communications, and I talk to a lot of recruiters and they're saying that there's been a real increase in the number of roles around communications and PR and generalists, and we continuously debate, should you be a generalist, should you be a specialist, which is the most important? And I think that's absolutely down to either the individual and the career path they want to take, or it's down to the actual the organisation you work for. So I think that debate will go on. I would say, however, that one area where the skills and the skill requirements haven't changed over the last few years, and they're not going to, is the need for marketers to have strong communication skills, customer relationship and internal relationship skills, and stakeholder management skills. So, as a marketer, you can be the best marketer in the world, but if you are really poor at building relationships and communicating your ideas, what's the point of having all of that, knowledge, if you can't share it and get people to buy into it? So I think the soft skills, and I hate calling them soft skills, the fundamental skills of being a person are always going to remain, in my personal view, the most important. And then the other skills around that, we see fluctuations depending on the environment and what's happening in the market, really.
Yeah, one of the other guests I've had on was talking about the role of personalization, or not personalization, sorry, personability in marketing. We were talking about how video has been quite a thing that, like at Spotler, we've got into as well. Like we made sure all our webinars have video, which is something we hadn't really thought about much before because they replaced our seminars. And then obviously podcasts like this, where it's a one-to-one conversation, personality or personability, however you want to talk about it, it is really important. But then whether you can translate that into sort of white papers and guides and heavier content is something that I'm still thinking about, whether you can do it and whether it's appropriate to do it in that context.
In terms of what learning and understanding how you hone those skills down and do those.
Yeah, in terms of sort of position through the funnel, I think, because when you're trying to engage someone at a top of the funnel level for especially through social, through emails, like you can be a bit kind of a personality infused. These will catch their attention with something probably quite friendly, and the Spotler brand voice, we deliberately try and keep quite friendly across everything that we do. But then you get to a weight of the content, especially when you're looking at, if someone's down to the stage of considering how our software would plug into their CRM.
Yeah.
When you get to those technical details, personability isn't what they're looking for. They're looking for, like, what are the dry technical things that we need to know.
Yeah, and I think, you've got those pure technical roles, your SEO, your PPC, your email, and those pure technical digital specialists, very, very true to what they do. I think those personable skills, though, if you want to, I guess, for example, if you take the current environment now where there are a lot of jobs coming onto the market, but there are also an awful lot of candidates. So how do you stand out in a crowd of people all going for the same role? Or if you're a recent graduate, and we all know that graduates and university students have had a really tough time during 2020,
Yeah.
how do you apply for a role which over 18 months ago there were more jobs than there were candidates? So if you wanted a job, you could effectively get a new job, you could chop and change. But I think we've got all of these we've almost got a perfect storm at the moment. You've got graduates who are going to go into a working world where there is loads of other candidates available. We've also got people coming out of lockdowns where they either go, well, I don't want to live where I'm here anymore, or I'm going to change my job. And recent research I've been reading shows really high percentages of marketers want to change their jobs in the next 18 months. And I think that's either a symptom of being locked down for 18 months and reevaluating what you want out of life, or you've lost your job, or there's other factors at play. So I think it's really interesting at the moment in how on earth, unless you have got superb technical skills, and that's what makes you stand out, as you say, that's all they're looking for. But even then, how do you get down that initial top end of the funnel for people to notice you? I think you've got to still have the ability to communicate and build relationships and be liked, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose it comes down to that. Do you have that kind of, do you say, oh, I want to work for the right people that get my personality, I can bring that out? And if you're changing jobs, you can be much more picky. You can say, like, I want a place that fits my personality with the culture, that like the matchup is there. Whereas if you're a graduate, there's, as I remember it being a graduate, there's a lot of pressure to get a job, and it almost doesn't matter which one it is. So there's kind of two tracks at play.
Yeah, and I think the traditional graduate schemes, I think I don't know precisely where they are at the moment, but a lot of organisations closed down their graduate intake programs because of financial reasons and things like that. And I think it's just a case of what do you want to do? How do you work out what you want to do? Who you want to work for? Does that brand align to the values that you have as a person, and is it going to take you where you want to go? And how do you, I guess, present the best version of yourself at the right time?
Yeah, absolutely. I wonder if we can switch track a little bit. We've kind of talked about sort of marketing trends generally, but what I was really interested about when we got you on was, as marketing director of the CIM, you're marketing to marketers.
Yeah.
And I feel like, because I've worked in marketing for 6 years now, I've become not cynical exactly, but you sort of you see a bit of marketing, you think, okay, I know what that's doing, I know how it's to get, especially ones that actually genuinely I like at first, and I sort of think about it and go, oh yeah, that's how they've done that, that's really clever. Does you as the CIM have to approach marketing differently when you're talking to that kind of the audience with the higher base level of knowledge, do you think?
I think from the position I'm in, working for the professional body that represents the marketing profession, I always go in thinking that everybody has the same level of knowledge in the breadth of what we have at CIM, and actually you don't. You kind of are either very siloed in either the industry you work in or the actual area you work in. But it's interesting because we have kind of 2 or 3 different elements that we have to cover. So we have our revenue streams, which is through our professional qualifications, our training, and our membership. So we do marketing as marketing is done, with our campaigns and lead generation, and we do those through testing different types of campaigns: product-led campaigns, value-led campaigns, career-led campaigns. Do we go to the individual? Do we go to the organisation to get them to engage on the importance of upskilling and what we offer? And then we've got this whole other piece where we represent the profession, and I think it's from that perspective our content gives us our voice and our conversation that we want to have. We work with social channels like every other organisation, and we have a real test and learn culture, because we kind of have to know how to do, we should have to know how to do everything across social media, you know. We're always testing different platforms and trying to find the best strategies for working with them, and all the while we're doing that, we're bringing back information in what works for us as an organization, because I guess if you take it back to its actual core, we're doing what every other business would be doing. So it is interesting, but I think that breadth of knowledge and the breadth of our network and who we engage with, you know, I think we arguably have one of the broadest networks, marketing networks out there. We have, you know, academic partners, we have authors, we have specialists, we have practitioners, we have other marketers at all levels of seniority. And I think it's more the fact that we have quite a balanced, trusted and neutral, you know, view on things. You know, we'll call out things that we don't believe are the right things to do, but not in a kind of finger pointing, mob handed way. And then we provide support and knowledge and information to marketers. So from that perspective, it's like different. I think from that perspective, it's a case of that's where our breadth of knowledge comes in, and the need for my team to have a much broader knowledge of marketing as a profession. It's, yeah, we're representing a profession, as you say, not an industry or a particular product, so to speak.
Yeah. Do you think that sort of marketing, when you talked about the difference between approaching an organization to train their people and the people themselves direct, do you think approaching marketers directly has more in common with B2C than it does with B2B? Probably, if you're strictly, it is business to consumer by a sort of very, very, you know, literal definition of what B2C is. Very interested to see where that line falls.
Yeah, and I think, you know, in fairness, probably the majority of our business is B2C, or would be defined as B2C, because we do work with individuals. And then there's the B2B side where we deliver into organizations. But again, we're delivering into organizations either from a subject-led area, or go down to skill sets, we're back to working individually with marketers at all different levels. So we do make conscious decisions to ensure that we are building our B2B portfolio up, and looking at how, you know, we maintain knowledge and support in that area. But the majority, by I guess natural selection, is a kind of B2C relationship that we have.
On the basis of that, there's quite a bit of chat about sort of cross-pollination, if you like, between what B2B and B2C can learn from each other. Is that a red herring, or do you think there are genuine things that B2C does that B2B could do, and vice versa?
I think there's definitely learning from each of them. I think people are dealing with people, irrespective whether you're dealing with people in another organization or you're dealing with customers, you know, out in society, in the general public. You're still dealing with people. I think there's probably, in my view, there is a longer relationship to be built up on a B2B basis, because it's my business working with your business. So I think, you know, from what I look at and what I read and the discussions I have, that longer term build up in the relationship of what you can do for each other is probably a longer period of time, and it becomes a more sort of, I guess, long-term relationship. Whereas B2C can be anything from, I'm going to go in and buy your product once and it's transactional and I'll never speak to you again, or you do build up a sense of loyalty but with a much broader consumer base who then will buy from you because you either, I don't know, deliver a really strong quality product to them, or, you know, sadly you hit a price point, which is something we need to move away from. And, you know, there's still that relationship there, but I think it's a slightly different relationship. But absolutely, I think some of the principles still stand, whether it's B2C or B2B. And I'm sure there will be some arguments against that, depending on whether you work in B2B or B2C. But I think, you know, people are still dealing with people at the end of the day.
Yeah, I suppose the B2B relationship is probably more either stable or predictable, probably long term. You know, like a business is, you know, for Spotlight, we do marketing automation. We're not suddenly going to need training in how to sell shoes. I mean, barring something monumentally different happening. Whereas I've been in a couple of different marketing roles, and they've been in different industries, and they've had different focuses. And, you know, for example, at the end of 2019, my aim for the year was to work on face-to-face presentation skills, to do seminars. And obviously that changed in in a fairly major way. So it's where an individual marketer is more going to be all over, like them. You might have a connection to the CIM for longer as a marketer, but you're not going to have that as consistent a relationship, because you could easily suddenly need a completely different set of skills to what you focused on before.
And I don't know if the expectation is the right thing, but I think in a B2B relationship, I think there is the expectations, maybe not necessarily higher, but there is a certain level that you would absolutely want to maintain. Whereas, if you're a B2C and you don't deliver to your customer, and they go, oh, well, I'm going to go somewhere else, there's probably not that same level of, I guess, fallout or urgency behind that, depending on how big your consumer base is, really.
Okay, that's probably a good place to wrap it up. That there's the things that are changing, the things that have stayed the same, and we'll end up back where we started. No, I've got one more question for you. Is it marketer or is it marketeer? That's the big one for this podcast.
I say marketer, and I come across people who say marketeer, and then generally as we get halfway through a conversation, they start to say marketer, and I don't know if it's that subliminal thing of she keeps saying marketer, I keep saying marketeer, but I think there is that. I say marketer. I guess potato. It's something I guess you should open up to your listeners, have a poll on it or something, and see.
Yeah,
what do you say?
We'll put that one on the episode page and on the social link to it. That's really, it's mimicry, isn't it? Like if someone leans forward or crosses their arms in conversation, you tend to do the same even if you don't think about it. So there's probably a psychology element in there as well to that. But it's good to get an official marketer's opinion on. There you go, marketer. I would tend to say marketeer as well, but I've started doing it as well. Brilliant. That is a nicely controversial note to wrap up on. So once again, thank you very much for being on, and thank you for sharing the insights.
Thank you for having me. It's been good.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of That Marketing Podcast. You clearly have wonderful taste. We hope you found the content useful and enjoyed it. We'd love you to subscribe wherever it is you're listening to us. Maybe leave us a review if you can think of a topic that you'd like us to cover, or even if you fancy coming on the podcast and sharing your own experience on a particular topic. You can reach us at marketingteam@spotler.co.uk. Thanks once again, and happy marketing.